Good morning. That means you can hear me, so that's a good sign. Watching an American Sign Language professional describe the explosion of a bottle of chocolate milk is a sight to behold, isn't it? It is a sight to behold. You know, I have a couple of other stories that are a bit like that. About 30 seconds into this journey, I was pretty convinced that something terrible had gone wrong. We were on a boat at the side of the river Seine in Paris. I had gone out to visit a client who had somewhat flipped the client-agency relationship dynamic on me. They had actually looked after us for once. It was really nice. I was the agency in this scenario. And I'd gone out to visit this client in Paris. They were a large oil consulting company. I was at the start of my career. It was my first international business trip. And the client in question was a small French man. Eric's here later. It wasn't him, don't worry. But a small French chap called Francois, his actual name. And the only way to describe him was a cross between a kind of French bulldog and a kind of rugby prop forward, if you know what that is, or like a linebacker. He was about 5'4" and had an accent as thick as, you know, kind of a wedge of cheese. He was quite a guy. And he invited us out on his boat that evening on the Seine, a little pleasure cruiser, and we went down and got on board this boat, and we were greeted by picnic boxes. These were beautiful picnic boxes. They were about, you know, kind of the size of a piece of paper, purple, thick. They had real silverware in them and little salt and pepper shakers like you get on the airplane, and which I did steal. And it was a lovely experience. It was also followed by about 12 bottles of Chateau Petrus behind us as well, which kind of made the experience interesting. And we were on this boat, and Francois looks around at us and he says, "Okay, I think we're ready to go." And I said, "Okay, that sounds good." And so Francois turns to the deckhands and they unlash the boat down the side. And he grabs the handle and he throws it down, and off we cruise into the River Seine, the lights of the Eiffel Tower lighting our, starry night. And it was about 30 seconds into that journey that I knew something was terribly wrong, because the sound of metal ripping, followed by the cracking of wood splintering, and then the splashing next to us, was what accompanied me as I looked to my left and saw the poles around the outside of the boat next to us being ripped from the deck and splashing into the water behind the boat. Yeah, that's how I reacted. And so I looked at this thing, and I looked at Francois, and he looked at us. And there was another small French man that emerged from the boat next to us. And what appeared to have happened is that the deckhands had unlashed us from the mooring that we were attached to, but they hadn't unlashed us from the boat next to us. And so we were ripping the deck apart of the boat as we cruised away. And Francois, well, he looked at us, and he looked at the French guy next to us who was screaming something in a language I cannot neither pronounce nor repeat. And all he said was, "Do not worry, we will deal with it tomorrow." And he put the hammer down on that boat, and we cruised into the night. And I have no idea what happened to that boat ever again, but we will deal with it tomorrow. Sorry, Eric, if you're in the room, by the way, that accent was probably going to get me cancelled. For those of you watching online, please don't tweet that. But we will deal with it tomorrow. This, my friends, I feel like is one of the big things that arises when we think about this industry that we're spending a lot of time thinking about, this artificial intelligence industry. Because whilst we're plowing into experimentation, while we're taking on new opportunities, while we're constantly flabbergasted, is there a word for that let's see. Yeah, flabbergasted in the world of in the world of AI, constantly. We also, I think, have a tendency to kind of say, well, there might be some issues over here we need to deal with, but maybe we'll deal with them tomorrow. Let's just keep going. And my challenge to you this morning is that if we want to put the foot on the accelerator pedal into this world of translation, into the world of producing new experiences that further the gospel and that bring people to know Christ through artificial intelligence, we need the foot on the accelerator. But you would never get in a car with an accelerator pedal that didn't have a brake. And so we have to understand that if we don't put good brakes into these experiences, then we should never be pushing on that accelerator. And so what I want to talk to you about this morning as we get started is this idea around AI risks and ethics, and understand a little bit more about how we can have a bit of a framework to think about these things as we go forward. Is that okay? Okay. For those of you listening online, I'm very sorry if I'm going at a pace you can't keep up with, but I have been doing this for a long time and I've never got any slower, so I apologize to you now. Okay, a quick disclosure statement. Some of the content in this presentation was produced using AI. Here is a full statement. It gives you all of the information you will need. You'll not be able to read it. Bye. Okay, it's important, I think, that transparency is a place that we start from, hey? I want you to think for a moment. What's the best dinner party that you've ever been to? Maybe for those of you in the room, just close your eyes for a couple of seconds. Hopefully the caffeine doesn't, kind of keep us from falling asleep. What's the best dinner party you ever went to? Hopefully it was some nice food, right? That's a prerequisite for a dinner party. Otherwise, it's not a good one. Maybe you showed up on time. Hopefully you showed up on time. Hopefully your host was glad to see you. And hopefully that they kind of entertained you. There were some other people to talk to. It was a nice experience. You may be left with a gift, and you left on time being welcomed back again at some point in the future. The dinner parties, they have some rules about them, don't they? You can open your eyes, by the way, unless you've nodded off. What are the two things that you never speak about, though, at a dinner party? Politics and... Okay, let me tell you about a dinner party. I went to this dinner party at it's a place in the UK. If you hadn't noticed, my accent might give it away that I'm not from these parts. In the UK, called the Royal Agricultural College. The Royal Agricultural College is a place in rural England in Cirencester. Anyone been there? No, good. And the Royal Agricultural College is famous for a couple of things. One, it has a massive monument to Thomas Cranmer. Anyone know who Cranmer is? Yeah, okay, good. The scholars in the room know Cranmer and the Book of Common Prayer. And I was at the Book of Common Prayer Society's annual general meeting, and I had dinner with a bunch of people. And I sat down at this dinner party, and I was sat across from a chap called Stanley Johnson. Stanley Johnson is the father of Boris Johnson. You may be familiar with him. He's been in the news. And Boris Johnson, and I was sat next to the Bishop of Rochester on my right. Guess what we spoke about? You see, when we talk to AIs, when we have AIs join the conversation, I think it's super important that we're able to make sure that they stay on topic, right? And that they also don't stray into areas that we wouldn't have them be involved in. The thing is that we have this alien experience going on right now, don't we? They're coming to live with us. I mean, if I had told you a few years ago that there were aliens coming from another planet, that they were definitely coming, like we knew they were on their way, we had critical evidence that they were on their way, but they're coming on from 30 years from now, the time horizon wouldn't matter to us, would it? All that would matter is that we knew that they were coming. Now, let's take aside the point that, like, a few months ago, people, testified in Congress that they're already here, and we all wake up every morning not concerned about that. Just leave that there for the moment. But we would prepare every single day like they're coming. And I think that one of the things that we've taken somewhat for granted in the church is that we see opportunities on the horizon and we're running after them, but we haven't taken into account that these AIs are learning from us in the same way that an alien observing Earth at a distance is learning from us. And we have this opportunity now to engage with these technologies, to imbue them with all of the knowledge of human existence, but we also need to put the guardrails around them to keep them on topic, to keep them in the conversation. So how do we prepare for the aliens are coming? It feels like we've kind of hit this peak AI everywhere all at once kind of moment, doesn't it? You know, this isn't just in these rooms where we're in expertise, kind of talking about this topic. This is subsumed into all of our experience every day in life, in media, in culture, in our education systems. It's everywhere. And it's happened so quickly. And we've seen this in previous media revolutions as well, that when suddenly there's a massive explosion of things, the church has a couple of different ways of reacting to it. Often it's either keep it at bay. We look at, looking for 666 in the code, making sure it's not there. We keep that safe. Or that we're slow to adopt things and then are slightly regretful that we didn't get there quicker. And sometimes it's both. And I want to say to us that despite this acceleration, this explosion of things like ChatGPT in the past couple of years, I mean, this is the fastest consumer explosion of technology that we've ever experienced, right? is that when these things happen to us, it can be very easy for us to go one of two ways. Either go, isn't this amazing, dive in full force, or try and pull up the drawbridge and say, we're going to keep this out of these areas of the church. And my opportunity, I think, for us is to say we can go after the accelerator pedal, but we also have to have really good brakes when we go and use it so that we can pull back. Because we've seen in past media revolutions, haven't we, and with what's happened in social media in particular in the past decade, that there can often be secondary and tertiary consequences that we don't foresee when these things first emerge, and we want to be protecting against them. So let's think a little bit about what those issues might look like. Well, AI is everywhere all at once, and because we're often thinking about it in lots of different contexts, it's important to see how quickly it's penetrating into different areas of our experience. This is no longer like a platform that we had when social media emerged. I do a lot of work with large global companies here in the US and in Europe, and one of the things that they are constantly asking is like, whose job is it to do AI in our companies? Are you experiencing that? Whose job is it? When social media emerged, we hired a social media person, and it became their job. Even you go further back, when the web emerged, we hired a web person, and it was their job. But whose job is AI when it's in all of the things that we already have and use every day? AI ethics in particular isn't just one person's job. It's all of our jobs. And I think we need to get our organizations, the people that we interact with, and our partners understanding that this isn't something that they can just put a chief AI officer in and that will deal with the problem, or even an ethics officer and deal with the problem. We have to make this a problem that everyone is accountable for, because this affects everyone. At Vixen Labs, the company that I run, we run an annual survey called the AI Consumer Index, looking at the adoption of AI by the general public in the US, the UK, Mexico, Germany, and Australia. And from our data this year, we know that over 50% of adults in the US have already used some form of generative AI tool, and nearly 67% of the adults in the UK are already using chatbots of some description multiple times a week. And unlike previous media revolutions, this doesn't contain itself within, the next generation, the alphas or the Zs or the Ys or the elder millennials as myself. It doesn't contain itself in these generations. It cuts across all age brackets and demographics. And so when something has been adopted that quickly, we have to realize that this is something that affects all of us equally. We might be in our individual projects here in this context thinking about translation work or mission work and thinking about it in a very specific application. But this technology has reached far greater consumer adoption than anything that we've ever seen before, far faster, and way quicker than we've been able to keep up with both regulation and also with kind of guidance and guidelines. And it's going to continue to accelerate into new form factors that we couldn't possibly have foreseen before, from things like physical AI devices, like the rewind pendant, or you might have seen in examples of the AI humane pin. People nodding? You've seen this? The humane pin and like the Rabbit R1 gadget that's just been released. Mine might at some point show up in weeks to come. And these new types of devices are going to go living with us in our everyday experience, right? It's nice ideas, even exemplified today. You've all got stickers on your lanyards, right? Daniel mentioned it before about photos, okay? I mean, if I walked up here and just took a photo of this room, do I need your permission? You're in a public space. Technically, no. We've got some agreed social norms here. But what about when I'm walking around wearing one of these at all times, filming constantly? Will we come to accept these things? How many of you in the early days had how many of you were Bluetooth guy? There's a lot of men in this room. Yeah, Bluetooth guy? Well done. So you had the little thing, yeah, like this microphone, little blue kind of ear. That was a look for a while, kind of early 2000s. Went really well with your BlackBerry Curve. Yeah. That never really kind of reached like peak social acceptance, did it? BlackBerry guy with the Blueberry mic. And I think we've seen, though, that these devices can reach social acceptance very quickly, far quicker than we might expect. How many of you have got a pair of AirPods in your pocket and wear them constantly, right? If you took AirPods as a device category out of Apple and listed it on the stock market, it would be bigger than NVIDIA and Adobe combined. Well, before NVIDIA started selling GPUs. But it's huge, right? And I don't think necessarily that this is the device that's going to come next for us. But these devices raise really interesting ethical questions around what are the boundaries that we have chosen to put up in society and how will we maintain them when AI is no longer a thing that's contained in an intentional device that you have to retrieve from your pocket and place in front of someone, but is ambiently in front of us at all times. You know, we're being afflicted by what Keane says here, this new disease, that technological unemployment may become something that is we all have to live with. He wrote this in 1930. You know, technological unemployment. AI ethics isn't just an issue of technology, but it's also an issue of humanity. I'll say that again for emphasis, and so he gets that. AI ethics isn't an issue of technology, it's an issue of humanity. If I come into your organization tomorrow and say, hey, I've found a way of us reducing your expenditure in your call center by 30%, if you're a shareholder-driven organization, you know, the CEO or the CFO is going to say, great, let's do that. What do we do with the 30% of people that we just lost from that organization? The technology doesn't need to be questioned necessarily, but the humanity does. These are the types of issues that are presenting us with some really difficult questions that we've not had to face before. But I think they can be centrally summed up in this. The robots, they're coming to help. Great. Or the robots are coming. Help. Like, which is it? This seems to be the challenge of the day. This is the thing that we are faced with as we bring AI into our ministries, into our companies, into our schools, and into our everyday family experiences. Is that are they really coming to help, or are we going to need to help them help us? So, I want to put to you guys that this is our Gutenberg moment. None of us sit around questioning every day that, the news or the book that you don't like exists today because Gutenberg invented the printing press. We don't say that there is some ethical issue with the printing press. It enabled amazing things, but its original intention was the spreading of the gospel. We see this technology that we have now in our hands today as gives us the ability to spread the gospel. But will we question whether or not it will also spread fake news or things that we don't like, the world might agree with? So this is our moment, and we only get one shot at this, I think, to go after these opportunities, because we won't get to put these things back in the box. And I think it's in rooms like these and in conferences like this where we will get to set these standards, and so I hope that we'll take it seriously. We've seen throughout the history of AI, all the way back as far as Turing with his test for good or for bad, that the different emergent experiences have arisen through the development of the AI that we have today. And at each one of these different stages throughout this history, the church has had opportunities to try and respond to the use of technology, not just in the AI landscape, but throughout all of history. When we first saw, we worked back through the emergence of things like the Bible app. We worked back through things like online church. I mean, remember when 5 years ago we had people saying, "Oh no, we can't do online church; it breaks down relationships," and then COVID comes in and changes our opinions on these things. The church has had to learn to respond to technology throughout the history of all different revolutions. We can't put it back in the box, but what we can ask is, what are we going to do about it? So, will we embrace AI with a kind of awkward Christian side hug, or will we kind of go full frontal? Yeah, I'm going to stick by that. When the technology moves, the church responds, as I say. We've seen throughout this experience that often, as I said, we respond either too late or we push back too heavily. Go back as far as the 1440s, Gutenberg produces things with the Bible. Radio broadcasts begin to help us take the gospel across the airwaves, and then we see the televangelist movement emerging with television all the way right through till now. But every one of these different stages, we've seen the good and the bad emerge at the same time. And I want us to think about, as we move into this next phase of technological development within the church, that we bring to it our own ethical framework, that we establish an agreed set of guidelines and a way in which that we will do this together. The important thing to say is that AI ethics isn't something that the church isn't already thinking about. For those of you, this will be too small at the back, but this comes from the GLUE AI in the Church survey. People might have read some of that work that's come out. Some great work done by our colleague Steele, who's here, and the broader team at GLUE. And we found that there are many church leaders who are admitting to feeling uncomfortable and anxious about AI coming into their churches. They say that they should resist or condemn it, a quarter at this point. But there is also almost as many people that say they want to enthusiastically embrace it. And we see that this affects everyone's adoption of AI throughout the whole of the church ecosystem. If leaders are feeling this way, then we know that congregations are also feeling this way. And those of us that lead ministries or steer different Christian organizations are also affected by this stuff. So we need a framework, I think, in order to be able to make sure that more people are able to do this well, to put that foot on that accelerator pedal, but also that we have good guardrails in place to make sure that we do that sensibly. No? Always the way. Why does this matter? I just want to put it to you that, you may be in this room because you are thinking about AI, right? Raise your hand if that's you. You're actively involved in an AI project or are thinking about building AI tools. Okay. Welcome to the 1%, right? We in this room are a great community of people dealing with some really interesting issues. But I would put it to you that the majority of church leaders across the country and around the world do not wake up every day thinking about what you're thinking about. They get up and think about, how am I going to get this sermon prepared by the end of the week? They think about, what about this couple that's going through a divorce in my congregation? They think about, I need to hire a new administrator, if they're lucky enough to even to have the budget to do so. Or in my country, they're just worried about the roof falling in on their church that's been there since the 1500s. This is problems that we deal with. But these are not the problems that they will deal with in the next decade. The problems they will deal with in the next decade is the young person coming to their youth leader and saying, I've fallen in love with the chatbot, what do I do? Do you think the average church leader is well equipped to answer that question? Or they might be asked with their administrator saying, hey, we've been taking attendance over the past 6 months and we've got these new cameras in the sanctuary. Can I apply face tracking software to them so I can check who's coming on a regular basis? Will they do that? Or they might just be simply saying, hey, I just want AI to write my sermon for me because I just don't have time this week. And maybe I'll also get it to write the prayers at the end of the service as well. Should they? Could they? They can. These are the issues that I think the church will deal with over the next decade. And I put it to you guys that as much as we want to bring this technology into the church, we also need to bring answers to these questions into the church as well. Because if we want AI to be embraced fully, then we also need to have a good brake pedal to control it as well. We're seeing so many emergent use cases. I mentioned sermon prep, worship planning. We're seeing examples of AI coming in to help with pastoral care. And a hackathon that we were at just before Christmas, we did see actually live examples of people trying to build face tracking software to manage attendance records. This stuff is being worked on in different places. And you've seen here, even in the past 48 hours, examples of new AI tools that are coming to help with biblical literacy, to help with biblical interrogation, and to help people, obviously take this to every tribe, every nation, every language. And so there is huge opportunity. So I really don't want you guys to take from this talk that this is not something we should be doing. We absolutely need to. In fact, it's imperative that if we really want to reach the world with the gospel, then we need the acceleration of this technology because, frankly, I don't think we're doing a great job of it without it. So we want to go after this stuff, but I want to put it to you that we need a framework to weigh this stuff up, not only against our own theology, but our own ethics. And we have a good one because we have the truth. We see examples in things like BibleMate, Bible Chat, and so many other examples I could pull out. That biblical interrogation in particular is one of the real areas of effort going in at the moment. But I think there are far more examples as we go beyond just the analysis of the Bible or kind of interpretation of Scripture where AI will begin to play a part in our church experiences. And so we need to take some time to really critically think about how that's going to affect us. This is fun. I can't honestly remember why I put this slide in here, but I think it's fun to look at. What would Jesus prompt? Yeah, maybe that's the new band that we all need. So, AI ethics, just to kind of give you a few things to think about. For those of you that might have read this book, this is not a Christian resource by my friend Marie Blackman. Fantastic piece of work looking at the big issues in AI ethics. And bias and fairness in particular, I think, is one that we've had to pay an awful lot of attention to. If you haven't read this book, by the way, I do thoroughly recommend it. It will give you a kind of good primer to building an AI ethical framework for your organization and particularly for your churches as well. But these issues These are not new issues, right? We've been seeing this since the dawn of the internet. These are the same issues that we've been dealing with for a long time. But they have far outweighed impact now in our current circumstances. And whilst they're helpful to think about in the broad sense, we also need to bring more than just the technological issues to the table, but also the theological issues to them as well. You see, AI ethics starts with AI theology, and the thing is that we have a good AI ethic because most of our ethics comes from, guess what, the Bible, in most of Western democracy. If any of you have read Tom Holland's Dominion book, he accepts that basically in the Western world we cannot extricate ourselves from Christendom, despite the fact that most of us would say that we wouldn't be Christian, because it's so imbued into the way that our societies work. So we do have Christian ethics actually at the heart of most of what we're doing. But I think in particular around the issues of human dignity, justice, and accountability, these are the things that we need to be asking ourselves when we build these experiences. When we build AI tools that choose to replicate a person's voice or their image, are we taking the opportunity to give gainful employment to that person away from them? When we ask people to use AI to make judgment calls about whether or not we should employ someone or not, or a mortgage should be given to them or not, are we using the right content to be able to fuel those experiences? And are you able to explain how your AI is able to do what your AI is able to do? For many, we know that this can be a problem. Like, explainability is also going to be a huge part in this framework. And so I want us to begin to think about a joint framework here. This is our kind of call to you as a part of this conference, and the reason we're being here is to say, will you work with us to think about building a joined-up AI ethics framework for the church? Because if we don't have this, I feel like we do have no really good leg to stand on. We can start projects left, right, and center. We can go after opportunities galore. We can invest and we can build. But if we don't all have a grounded and agreed understanding on what we will do and what we believe to be permissible, I think we will run into some real issues down the line. So some practical tips to think about as you're adopting AI in practice into your organization. Have you considered how AI is affecting the daily work of your organizations? Not just the thing that you are making that is specifically an AI tool for many of you that you're working on that, but actually how is AI going to affect those that you seek to minister to and those that you seek to serve? Have you evaluated the current AI usage in your organizations? For those of you that are parts of large teams, do you actually know what tools are being used? Like, I can say to you the amount of enterprises that I interact with who are like, we think we've got like 20 people using ChatGPT, and then they find out there's like 100 more of them that have all put it on their personal credit cards. Like, this stuff happens a lot. So have you actually got an understanding of what's being done inside of your organization? Have you developed an AI ethics policy? Is there something that is easily referenceable by your organization for those that do not spend their time coming to conferences about AI, where they can look at it and say, yeah, that's what we will and we will not do with these tools, and this is where we will use them? And have you trained your staff on the risks of going outside of that policy? Do they understand what this will mean? But most importantly is, are you bringing the broader opportunities and these issues to bear in the ministry that you're doing? Not just for the development of the tools, but for the actual outworking of this stuff in practice. So hopefully, this will kind of give us a starting point. But our call to action to all of you is to join in this work of beginning to think about what a shared AI ethical framework would look like for our organizations. I think the question, as it says here, is not whether machines think, but whether men and women do. We have the opportunity to shape what this technology will be like. And I think it's also critically important that we are in this moment, because you are the last group of Christian people building things in this space to remember what life was like before the robots came to help and after. And if we want to retain any of the good that came before and push it forward into what comes after, you're the people that are going to get to do that. No one else. It's us. And so if you want your youth workers to be able to answer the question of, what do I do when I fall in love with a chatbot? Or, should we be putting cameras here? Or should we be tracking every word that someone has written into Microsoft Teams for their performance review at the end of the year? Some of you. Then you're the guys that get to choose that. And that's all of our jobs. Because AI ethics isn't one person's job. It's all of our jobs. So, with that, I will say that you are the last of us. Make sure the robots help. And if you would like to join and get more involved in the think tank and community that we're building at something I launched earlier this year called Ecclesiae, you can find out more here. Join us on Slack. If you'd like to help get those that you work with in ministry work more ready, they can take the AI readiness test that we developed in partnership with Glue at glue.us, and find me online to help. But hopefully this will give us a place to start from. And I just ask that whatever you do, you don't say, we will deal with it tomorrow. Thank you so much. Oh. Thank you.